And I've called this retreat, or we've taken the theme of the inner room. And of course, this is taken from one of the sayings of Jesus about prayer in Matthew in chapter 6, especially, where he gives his essential teaching on prayer during the Sermon on the Mount. Remember, the first thing he says about prayer is what prayer is not. He says prayer is not about what you do on the street corner when you're dressed up and attracting people's attention. I think all of us probably, or any religious person, whether you're a priest or a monk or a lay person, doesn't matter. I think any religious person has experienced something of the religious ego, the certain kind of satisfaction you get from looking religious in the eyes of other people. And that can be more or less. You may be more or less conscious of it. I wasn't particularly conscious of it until I became a monk and put on my habit. And then realized, of course, that people look at you and they think you must be more religious or closer to God than they are. So that's the first thing Jesus says about prayer, is not to confuse it with that feeling of satisfaction you get when the ego is stroked and people think specially or more highly of you. And then he focuses in a series of short, very memorable expressions on what prayer is, or not so much on what prayer is in an abstract sense, but how we enter into prayer, how we discover prayer as pure reality, as pure experience. So he's not giving us a definition of prayer, but he's telling us how to do it, or what it is we do in order to find it. And so the first thing he tells us is, when you pray, go into your inner room. Close the door and pray to your Father who is in that secret place. And your Father, who knows what is done in secret, will reward you. So this short saying brings us into contact with a very rich series of ideas or of insights into what prayer is and how we pray. Going, there's movement, into the inner room. It's about what we call interiority. Although we soon discover that the more we enter into this interiority of the inner room, we are actually transformed in our relationship with the outer world. So what does interiority really mean? It's not introversion, it's not insularity, it's not shutting down the contact with the outside world. But it's something we call interiority because we normally lack it, because we are excessively externalized, focused upon external achievements or activities or running around, as we usually call it. I once was talking to a student in a class I was giving at Georgetown as a young undergraduate, young woman, and she had told me that she had no religious background at all. And she said, I wasn't brought up in a home that was hostile to religion, but we just weren't interested in it and never talked about it. And she said, so I took this course, I forget which course it was she was on, and at the beginning of each class we had a short period of meditation, and I introduced them to meditation. And she said that the best part of the course, of course, was the meditation. So, and then she told me that I said, what did the meditation mean to you? She said, well, it's very strange. I can't describe it. I can't put my finger on it. But one thing I could say is perhaps I felt for the first time, this is the first time in her 21 years, that I had an inner life. An inner life. And if you asked her what she meant by that, she probably would have struggled to describe it, but those were the words she gave. I felt I had, for the first time, an inner life. And as a result of that, she was going to do another course next term with someone called The Problem of God. And she said, I've become curious about God because of this inner life. She was speaking a little bit like Etty Hillesum, if you know Etty Hillesum, the young Jewish woman during the war in Holland who discovered God in the most appalling conditions of the persecution of the Jews. So this is the first thing that Jesus tells us about prayer. It's a movement into this experience of interiority, but a different kind of interiority from what we might imagine or what we might understand even. And then he tells us you have to close the door. You go into this inner room, and you then close the door. Why do you close the door of a room? In order not to be distracted from what's going on outside, yes? What does it show? The most obvious thing of all, what does it show if you go into a room and then you close the door? What does it suggest? Huh? An intention to what? To be alone, yes. Privacy, yes. Solitude, okay, better. And that you're in relationship. Also, you're going to be there for a while. If you say, "Oh, I forgot my book in the other room," and you go into the other room, you don't close, and only to get the book, and then come out, you don't close the door. So there's an intention to be in that space, in that way of being, for a period of time, a significant period of time, during which you want to reduce as much as possible external distraction. And then he says, you pray in this inner space, in this secret space. And we pray to the Father. If you were to meet a Buddhist who asked you, what is the Father? What would you say? Creator? Pardon?
I would say
ultimate reality. If you were speaking to a Buddhist, yes. The Dalai Lama was once asked by an American sister Eileen O'Hay, some of you may know of. She once asked him, if you could meet Jesus, would you like to meet Jesus? And if you met him, what question would you like to ask him? And immediately he said, I would ask him, what is the nature of the Father? I think it's a question not many Christians have ever thought about, or could helpfully answer. So we pray, Jesus says, to the Father. This is a simple, immediately understandable expression, childlike in its simplicity. We might ask what it means to pray to the ground of reality, to ultimate reality, to the source, to the Creator. What does it mean to pray to that?